Hello, beautiful, lightful souls. I am so excited to have another near death experiencer on my channel this evening. Tony Woody is going to talk with me about his experiences as an instructor flight engineer in the Navy and his profound experiences, really. I've heard him speak at INs and on a few different videos, so I'm really excited to have you here, Tony. Thank you.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Tricia. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and I do want other people to check out the links to Tony's website and other places. And also, I have a near death experience summit with several different speakers that I want you to check out as well. But my first question to you, Tony, is you had your experience at 24. I was around 22 when I had mine. So there's a really clear line of who I was before and after. And I've heard you say something similar. Who were you before and who were you after?
Before, I was married, had about a 3-year-old son at the time. I had about 3,500 hours flight time experience in the military already. I was an instructor flight engineer by then. Grew up in a small town in East Texas, joined the Navy at 18 years old, had a Southern Baptist religion in East Texas, and that was my belief system. And everything changed in one
Wow.
day.
So yeah, I think I heard you say on a video that you went and you told your experience to a minister. Was that a Southern Baptist minister and it wasn't
Not
accepted? Or
Southern Baptist. By then I was in Hawaii. I was stationed in Hawaii. We were going to a Baptist church, but it wasn't Southern Baptist. There's the difference.
yeah. Yeah. And was it accepted, your near-death experience?
No,
Or
not at all. Nope. Matter of fact, the guy he just didn't say anything. He kind of tilted his head and he gave me this odd look. And then he just turned his back on me and walked away. I was dumbfounded. I needed help. That's what I needed.
do you think, and I've been thinking about this recently, that our experiences are so emotional and they're so profound and they're so experiential? Like I've heard you talk about how close you felt to God and that love and how it was overpowering. Do you think that perhaps it's too much for some people, our stories?
I've learned over time that in the beginning, I needed to talk, I learned quickly I couldn't talk to anybody in the military about it. I had a secret clearance at the time, and I was a flight engineer, instructor flight engineer. You start talking like that, and you're not going to be flying much longer or be in the Navy much longer. And I clearly loved what I was doing, and I wasn't about to give that up. So I clammed up, and that's not healthy either. That doesn't work. The light in you is going to come out, whether you like it or not. So rather than fight it, let it. But I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know any of that. And,
So do you feel like your belief system changed almost immediately? I know mine did, and I couldn't see the world the same.
I don't know about changed instantly. Mine, I'm an engineer, okay? So before I change anything, I investigate and make sure I know. And I knew the standard because I was there. I was in the light, so I knew what I was looking for. I just didn't know where to find it or how to go look for it. I didn't know any of that. And it took a long time, but for the first 20 years, pretty much, I just didn't talk anymore about it. And that created all kinds of problems in my life. I ended up, it cost me a marriage. That stuff happens. I'm not going to go into detail about that, but it was a struggle. It was a tremendous struggle. I think a lot of that could have been avoided had I simply been validated in the beginning and let me talk about it as if I were normal, because I am normal. I just needed some help, That's all I really wanted.
One of my big pushes and big hopes is that we as near-death experiencers can bridge that gap between a lot of conservative Christians and Christians, and we can strengthen their faith, not frighten them. I think these experiences are so overwhelming to some people when they hear, and we're passionate about it. I'm like, I know God. And I know that
the reason it's overwhelming to them is because I don't know how to make them feel it, and they can't imagine what it feels like when you're in the light. If I could just touch someone and then have them have that experience, there would be no fear. There would be no, you're crazy. There were none of that. They'd be like, I can't wait to tell somebody. You know, that's what happens.
I know. I feel like I need to lead meditations where we just allow people to imagine what it's like. I mean, I've heard you talk about all the mothers on earth, you know, sending all their love, and that's not enough. I felt like I was surrounded by love in ways that it was like a bubble of love that was like a blast, an atomic blast of love. Like I can't even
Yes.
describe how much love it was. I never wanted to leave that
No.
much love.
There's nothing else I want.
And and so I wish that there was a meditation. I wish there was a way to just like make people feel for just a little while how amazing that is.
Just an instant is all it needs. That's all they need, an instant of that.
Yeah.
It's still happening to me sometimes. I don't control it. I don't have that full blown light. I tell you what happened. And I'm not going to use her name because I don't want to, because it's her privacy, you know, but she was my massage therapist that I'd been seeing for a couple of years. And this happened in 2017. And she was 7 months pregnant at the time and knew that she was going to have a baby boy and was going to name him Noah. I already knew all that. And we were friends. I'd been seeing her for a couple of years. So over time, as we got to know each other, we started sharing our lives a little bit about what's going on in them. And we would help each other through difficult stuff sometimes. And so both of us had some anxiety issues going on that morning about different things going on in our lives. And then after that, I started talking to her. You know, I was telling you, I know the standard that I've been looking for years and years, decades, well over 3 decades before it came, the answers that I was looking for, I believe, for me, my answers came through this lady named Lilia, contacted me, had seen one of my videos and found a way to reach me. And we ended up talking and she started telling me about, she's so funny. She said, I'm a girly girl. You know, I didn't want to sit down and listen to your engineer stuff, you know, and this was one of the early ones. It was long and I wasn't very good at telling my story then. But she said, God kept telling me to go back and sit down and she'd have to go back and finish it. And then there came a part in that video when I said, I've been looking for over 30 years and I still haven't found what I think is the truth. And that was her impetus to call me. And so she started telling me about the St. Germain Foundation and their books called the I Am Discourses and things like that, and how those books came into being. And so she was her friend Nancy had a 19-year-old son years ago that had been killed in an accident. And these were his books and they mailed them to me. They felt like I needed these books so much that Nancy gave me her deceased son's books that she had for decades. It was years ago when he died, okay? But she gave them to me. And so that was overwhelmingly, I wasn't expecting that at all, but they did that. And I started reading these books and I read things that really made sense to me. And I'm like, that's exactly what I was feeling over there. That's how it works. That's what I experienced. I know what that law of light is. It's called the law of love. And it dominates and is what controls and powers the whole universe. And nothing isn't powered by that, nothing. And so I'm reading these books, and one of the things that the only time I'd ever seen this, for over 30 years, these words were written in one sentence, and that's when I went, I got it right here. It described the light as liquid, molten, golden white light. One sentence. I'm like, never have I ever read that anywhere, and I have read thousands and thousands of books over decades. I mean, everything I could get my hands on, I was trying to learn about it. Nowhere did I read that line like that. It also called it the love star. Perfect. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. All right. Those things resonated with me because I knew that's what I said. There's nowhere else I've ever read that described it like that. And I knew I was reading what I needed to be, what I thought was the truth. So I'm on my back getting my massage. Rosalind's working on my thigh and hip on my right. and I got my head up a little bit just so I could look in her eyes and talk, and I'm telling her about these books, and I'm getting excited about it. And as soon as I said the words liquid, molten, golden white light, you're talking about that power and the energy level surging. It surged through me, and it was like it was peace. It was divine peace. It was specifically peace. Okay, God has a way of making this energy hit you, and you know what it's for. It's for peace, or it's for compassion, or it's for hope or love. Those things, each individual one has its own signal or something. I don't know what to call it, but you know what it is, and it roared through me. It was like a billion freight trains all at once, and just for a solid minute, I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. It cut my voice off. All I could do was drop my head back on the table, and I had tears going down the side of my head, and it finally subsided, and I could move again. I raised my head up, and I looked at Rosalind, and she's frozen. She's still got her hands on me, and she's looking at me, and her eyes are huge, and they're wet, and we're looking right at each other. I said, "Did you feel that?" And she goes, "Uh-huh."
Oh, my
And Noah
goodness.
did too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. As we're talking about this, I think that energetically, we near-death experiencers, and we'll have to talk about this in another show at another time, I think we are going to activate more and more people on an energetic level to this
I
love.
didn't do that. I want to, wait a minute.
But it was God.
I see what you're saying, but that had nothing to do with me. I didn't control it. I didn't ask for it. It was God's choice. And all I was a conduit for God to do that. And I don't know me, but
Yeah, no, but I think that we're so in touch with it, and we know what it is that, we beg for it in a way, like we miss it. So there is this chance that God can work through us in those powerful ways. And I know that just hearing other people's stories kind of energetically puts me back in the light. And that's why I've continued to keep doing these interviews, because I might go in meditation and experience some of your light tonight, that you experienced. And it is
contagious, in a way that's why we need to go out and shine our own light. Because if one photon of love light penetrates someone else's heart, you just planted a seed. It may not be this lifetime or the next one, but it's planted, and it'll grow, because it never, ever fails. The light never, ever fails. No matter what we think's going on the outer activity here, we don't have the big picture at all. Not even close.
No. Yeah.
And so that's where faith comes in, and believing that, it's all for a reason and a purpose, and we're being protected, and we're precious. We're all loved so much, every one of us. And I don't know what the total plan is, but it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. So I agree. And I want to take you back now to the story that you're asked to tell a lot. But before I do, why do you think it's important for all of us to tell our stories? I have my ideas. I think that probably a different group of people connects with you, and you open them up because of your military background.
Yeah.
But I think that all of these individual stories are important because different people gravitate to each one, but it really reminds everyone of home. It reminds us of our soul's journey and our greater journey, right, and the importance of love. But why do you think it's important to keep telling these stories?
Well, for me, I'm more focused on the military aspect of it. I mean, I'll help whoever I can that comes into my life that God puts there, because that's what we're here to do. But, my focus is trying to help the military because they're suffering. It's just about that. I don't want them to suffer anymore. Anybody with that, the mental torture and fear of, oh God, doom's coming, I'm going to die. No, it's not. Yeah, you're going to die, but just your body. The rest of you is going to have an awesome ride. I've had some amazing things in my career in the military. I've been all over the world. I've flown at 200 feet off the water. I've been at air shows doing 300 knots at 300 feet in a 90-degree bank over the field. I've been upside down on purpose in an airplane doing defense air combat maneuver training before Gulf War I. Stuff in a 4-engine heavyweight, okay? And that's not a jet. We were in a 4-engine airplane upside down. That kind of stuff. And it just, none of that, as fun as it was, is anywhere near the thrill ride over there.
Right.
I'll trade all that. As much as I love being a flight engineer, I'd give that up. I'd give up any of it. None of this is that good, that wonderful, that perfect.
Yeah, so I totally agree. There is no risk, there is no drug, there is nothing on this earth, there is no love there that compares to that love. There just isn't. And so we're always getting pieces of it here. And the best that I can do, I don't know if you feel this, is I just want to bring it through me, and that's part of why I tell my story too, is it helps me connect to it and bring it through to the world. And so your story is a powerful one, and it's an interesting one. So if you would begin with that flight and give me some background.
Okay.
I don't really know that much about Navy flying, so.
Oh, well, it's a little different from your typical flying in the civilian sector, obviously. But it's a 70-ton, 4-engine, heavyweight turboprop aircraft called a P-3 Orion. I've got a little over 10,000 flight hours in them, but I started learning how to fly in the plane, learning how to be a flight engineer in the plane at 19 years old. And by the time I was 21, I was already qualified flying as the sole flight engineer on the airplane, taking them out. So I got pretty experienced at it. By the time the incident happened, I had been flying, I think, about maybe 8 years, 7, 8 years, something like that, 7 years. And I'm now stationed in Hawaii at Barbers Point Naval Air Station. And this is in 1982. And they had what was called the Rim Pack exercises, which are Rim of the Pacific. It's the largest military, joint military exercise in the world. You have all kinds of countries, Australia, Japan, Thailand, all kinds of different other countries involved. And they'll do all kinds of different things. And part of it is we would have the red enemy and the blue and the red team, right? Red's enemy, whatever. We were the opposite of it. And we'd go out and try and track the other guy's submarine and stuff like that. So it was our turn. And it's training at the same time, right? And so we take off for a 12-hour flight, and we call it, the airplane's what we call bagged out. We had max allowable takeoff weight. All the fuel you could carry, all the crew, all the sonobuoys, everything else we needed. It was maximum takeoff weight. We get in the air, get to about 10,000 feet as we're headed out over the water to go do our mission, and we have a malfunction on number 1 engine, which is the left outboard engine. And we shut it down. You can't dump all the fuel you want, so we dumped what we could. We have to get rid of some of the fuel because you can't land too heavy because you have a maximum allowable land weight that you do not want to exceed, or you can damage the aircraft. If you hit too hard, structurally, it would never fly again. So we burned fuel down, dumped fuel, then burned down fuel for another 45 minutes and went back to declare an emergency and land. We came in to land on runway 40 left, 040 is the heading. Parallel runways, runway 4 right is however far away to the right, a few hundred yards. And when you make a emergency landing and declare an emergency landing, they will have fire trucks or emergency fire equipment right on the side of the runway. And they'll sit at an angle, and as you go by, they'll pull in and go behind you. And then the next two, as you go further down, are pulling behind them. And so there's always somebody right there in case something goes wrong and they need you. You need them in a hurry. And usually that's a good thing, right? Having them right there ready. Not that day. For whatever reasons, the pilot put in incorrect rudder when we landed, and you expect a swerve with an engine out on the left side to swerve to the right because you have more reverse thrust on the right side because you got two engines pulling there than one on that. So you're going to swerve. So you use the rudder to control it and get you back on center line on the runway so you can stay on where you need to be. For some reason, he put in incorrect rudder. Now, when we landed, because we were so heavy, we were way faster than our normal airspeed and for usual landing weight. To give you an idea of the difference in weight, normally we would land at the end of a long flight, we'd have 8,000 pounds of fuel left on board. We can carry a total of 62,000.
And are you landing on a ship, or are you landing?
On runway. It's
okay,
on a regular runway. So there's parallel runways. You got 2 of them, and we're on the left one as we're coming in. But and we departed it to the right toward the other runway, fortunately. But anyway, where was I? Forgot what I was saying a minute ago. So we're headed off the runway. Oh, the rudder control. So he starts putting in incorrect rudder. And at those speeds, because we're going so fast, like I said, instead of landing with 8,000 pounds, we had 42,000 pounds still on board. So we're really heavy going in fast. 135 knots when we touch down. That's over 155 miles an hour. Things go wrong at those speeds, it happens in a hurry. And all of a sudden, as we departed and started going to the right, I'm thinking he's going to correct with a rudder and get us back on center line. And it went harder right because he put in more incorrect rudder, thinking he's putting in proper rudder, and it made it worse. And that's it. We're going off the runway. The next thing I know, I've got a fire truck headed right at my right wing. And I'm dead, and I know it. I got death coming at me at over 155 miles, 135 knots, and there's nothing I can do about it. You will not believe how much can go through your mind in about 3 seconds when you think that's all you got left. And my son and my wife and my family and I instantly knew what all mattered most. And I was about to lose it all. And I was terrified. And in that moment, all of a sudden, I'm out of the airplane.
And by that, you mean your spirit
I'm
form?
out of the airplane. I'm up above the airplane going, whoa, I don't know what's going on. I'm confused. I'm like, but I'm also still in the seat. I'm both places. And I'm seeing everything in super slow motion. All of a sudden, too, everything changed. This temporal distortion, I don't know what to call it. It was this slow motion thing. It was just all changed. And I didn't understand what was happening. I was very confused and very scared. And the me that was outside, though, was just as calm as just like I'm observing, you know. I might as well have been watching a YouTube video. It was that, you know, just observing and seeing things, not making any judgment of any of it, just watching everything. And whatever my attention got focused on, so the me in the flight station, I'm worried about I'm thinking the number, either the right engine, number 4 propeller, or the wing itself, or the main landing gear, something's about to slam into that fire truck. That's right. That was when my soul jumped out of my body. And then I could see the blades spinning on the number 4 propeller, and I watched 2 of the blades as they came around. And this plane's moving forward at 155 miles an hour, right? The blades are 13 feet in diameter from tip to tip. They weigh 2,200 pounds apiece. The engine, all 4 of them do, the propeller system, 2,400 pounds, turning at 1,020 rounds a minute, moving forward at 135 knots, and it gapped the front left corner of that fire truck. And one blade missed the front section of it, and the second one passed back the back side of that corner, and then it went on by. And I could see the guy on the silver suit, water cannon on the top, screaming his head off as the wing went over everything and missed by inches or whatever. I don't know. It was unbelievable. And I could see everything. I had unbelievable awareness. And that's when things got really strange. And I started seeing all this debris in the air. I saw this Pepsi can fly by the window. So me in the seat seeing things, I could read the Pepsi can, 10 ounces. I could see this fluid coming out of it. I could watch it all atomize. And then anything that was in the air as this thing I guess my consciousness expanded or something, but as this thing evolved and we were moving, more dust and stuff was thrown up in the air because of the plane throwing everything around, because we're now between the runways and planes don't go there. So there's a lot of debris, little debris stuff there, and everything that was in the air, I knew where it all was. Every one of them. I knew exactly what it was going to do. I knew where it had been, where it was going, and what it was doing on the way. And what should have been a totally chaotic experience had this feeling of sublime perfection going on that it was effortless, just effortless.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it. It's just effortless.
So how did you know that it was not a daydream or a dream or, you know, stress induced or PTSD?
In that moment, I didn't know anything. I'm
You
just
didn't
trying to figure it out. All right.
Really?
A second ago, I'm doing my job. I wasn't drunk. I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't unconscious. I wasn't out of oxygen. I wasn't on any of that. I was sitting in the center seat of a 70-ton, four-engine heavyweight airplane doing a 3-engine emergency landing as the flight engineer doing my job when it happened to me.
Right. And then suddenly time and space are different. They don't have the same meaning. And
that will rock your world. All right. And so as we're moving, and we ended up going all the way across the asphalt between the two runways and ended up half on, half off the other runway. We came to a halt as we stopped, and all of that, I call it fractured consciousness. I don't know what else to call it. It all just back into me into the chair, and I'm trying, you know, so raw. It's like, what the hell was that? You know, I look at Mr. Duffy, and I still to this day am not sure if I said it to him, because things were so bizarre when all that stuff was going on that it was not normal functioning of the mind or whatever was going on, or consciousness or whatever. Everything was changed. So I didn't know when I looked at him if I actually said to him, "Did you see that?" Because I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what to say yet. I didn't know how to word it, how to ask it. But I thought I said, "Did you see that?" Like somehow to him, and he's like, "Yeah," you know, like kind of like, "Are you kidding me?" type sound, you know. But to this day, I can't tell you if I actually verbalized those words or we looked at each other and just, I could hear each other's thought. I still am not sure, because I was pretty rattled in that moment too. You know, I just came off a massive adrenaline rush. When the plane stopped and all that pulled back into me, I was exhausted. I just felt like I had ran 5 marathons back to back. I was wiped out, tired. I looked over and I saw Duffy, and I watched him slump when he came down off of his, and then he looked at me, and that's when I'm not sure if I said the words or didn't, but I remember hearing them. And then I hear this whoo, whoo sound, you know, to my left. So I'm looking to my right, but then I hear that. And so Duffy and I, our eyes are locked on each other as we're looking at each other, right? So we're looking at each other, and then I hear that. I turned my head to the left, and that's the Lieutenant Lovegren who messed up the landing. Great pilot, you know, love the guy, but, you know, he gooned the landing that day. What can I say? He's stressed out. He's still on his adrenaline rush, and he's white knuckling the yoke, and he's trying to say something. And he goes, "Woo, woo, what the F did I do wrong?" I can't believe this has just happened, you know. And we're sitting there. Oh, it was nuts. And then we ended up adding power after the fire trucks got around us, and we figured out nothing was wrong with the airplane, and we rolled off. It added power and rolled off on the other runway. So I started a landing on one runway, and I finished it on an entirely different runway.
And
okay? So we go to the hangar, do all the post-flight duties, and I don't know what happened. I'm just kind of on automatic pilot and doing my post-flight, because I've done so many of them, I don't have to think about it most of the time. I mean, I do my duties, but and I went home and I didn't really talk. I didn't know what to do. I was just still kind of trying to figure out what that was, you know. So before I go home, I realized I'm on the flight schedule again for the next day. So the first flight that I just told you about was on a Monday. The next one was a refly on Tuesday, and our commanding officer was an instructor pilot. So he took my pilot that made the landing the day before, or on that day, Lieutenant Lovegren, and myself out. And I didn't think anything about it. I thought it'd be okay. No, I'm going flying. I got a bunch of flights under my belt. Let's go fly, you know. I'd never heard of this or experienced anything like this. I didn't know what PTSD was or any of that. Just didn't know about it. No, that wasn't even a phrase back in 1982. That wasn't even what they called it. They didn't have a name for it. So anyway, we get in the air, and we're starting to make the approach, and I'm now seeing the same thing I saw the day before, right before we had our bad landing. And I start having anxiety, and I didn't know what was going on, but I instinctively knew that I didn't want the skipper to see that. He's sitting right next to me. He's a little bit ahead of me, but then when I lean by, what I would do on landing, if we have to wave off for like a dog or a truck on the runway or something, you never know. If we have to wave off, it's the engineer's job to push the power levers. So I bent forward and acted like I had my hand on the power levers. I'm ready to go in case power is called by the pilot and he wants more power. What I was really doing was leaning forward so my skipper couldn't look over and see my face, because all he could see is the back of my head that way. And I didn't want to look outside, so that solved both problems at the same time. And first few landings, I could not look outside. Couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I had to convince myself that, and it's kind of too late. I'm the only engineer on the airplane, number one. Number two, I can't turn to the skipper and say, you mind if I bail out today? I don't really like it up here anymore right now. So I had to work my stuff through it and get past that. I did. And after that, I didn't have any more troubles with that. And then it's Wednesday. I don't have to fly, I don't think, but I'm home with family. It's after hours at work. And this sounds unrelated. I don't know how, but I know they're connected somehow. But the incident on the runway in the airplane was some sort of door or something. I don't know how. But on Wednesday, we're watching a TV show that used to come on regularly back then. And there was a show that was called That's Incredible. And
I remember that show, yes.
Pretty good. I can't remember the guy's name that was on there, but Kathy Lee Crosby and Frank Gifford, that's who it was. And they ended up getting married because they met on that show. So I thought that was pretty cool. But anyway, they had a show on there about Leslie Lemke, Lemke. And you can still find his video on YouTube. And his adoptive mother had adopted him when he was an infant, and she had said she had been told by God that in a dream that she would be offered 3 babies to adopt, and she's soon, because she couldn't have children, and she's to take the baby boy that's blind. And that's exactly what happened. And not only was he blind, they didn't know this at the time, I think, but later they realized he had no cognitive skills, couldn't talk, nothing, his whole life. He was like a full-grown infant, literally. And she heard music one night, and after he's now an adult, and she gets up to go downstairs to turn off the TV or something in the middle of the night, and here's Leslie, who has never spoken before, or certainly never sang or played a piano, is now sitting at the piano and singing gospel music, and just what I call the hauntingly holy voice. It just, oh man, I heard him sing, and I was like, that's a miracle. I knew I was seeing a miracle. That's all it can be. And so that night before I went to sleep, I'm in bed. I don't even say this prayer out loud. I'm in bed, and I say a little 10-second prayer in my head, and you don't really expect anything, right? So I said, just out of gratitude of seeing my first miracle, I was just thanking God for showing me. I now know everything's a miracle. I didn't know that at 24, but that's what I did. It was just a heartfelt, genuine prayer of gratitude just to God, nobody else. And I said at the end of that prayer, and Lord, it'd be nice if you could do something like that for me someday.
So you asked for a miracle.
I asked for a miracle, not realizing that. And I found out from Lilia later what happened, and it's explained in the St. Germain books. It's called the call, my prayer, the call compelled the answer. Because God loves us so much, but we have to ask and invite God in, because the respect level, God will not interfere with our lives unless we ask for that, because that's part of how the law of love works. And So I said that prayer, not realizing the impact it was going to have and not really even thinking anything else of it. I went to sleep, you know, you think anything's going to happen. Why, 10-second prayer in your head. Why would anything happen, right? But we used to call it "Oh Dark 30" in the military. I don't know what time it was. It was between 3, 4 in the morning, something like that. All of a sudden, I didn't go through a tunnel. I didn't have anything like that happen. Like you hear people talk about near-death experiences. I didn't know for years. It was decades before I learned what I had is called a spiritually transformative experience. But I'd never heard of any of this near-death, none of it before when it happened to me. And so I go to sleep, fell asleep right away, woke up at dark 30 in the morning, and it's instantaneous. The next thing I know, it's just like that. Boom, I'm now in a black void with the liquid molten golden white light right in front of me. And it's awesome.
I love it how you get so emotional, because it is really the most powerful experience in the world to know that we're that loved, and it's an experience.
I got big goosebumps right now. Everywhere. Oh, I love that. So it was, I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, feeling, and experiencing. Just jaw-dropping beauty. The first thing you know instantly is you're in the presence of your creator. You flat out know it. There's nothing else that can be. Nothing. You know it. That being is in command, and you know it. I don't mean command in a I'm going to control you no matter what thing. It's a loving, I've got your back. Nothing's ever bad going to happen to you. I don't know how to put it into words.
It felt almost parental to me, but I was contained. It's like I had freedom, but also I was completely safe at the same time. And I don't ever feel that in body, where you have total freedom and total safety at the same time. And I'm just like showered with enormous amounts of love.
And power. The power was immense power. I was like, what I instantly, later I had to think about it, but what I realized I was feeling was infinite power, infinite wisdom and intelligence, which are the one and the same. You can't have one without the other. And infinite unconditional love. And they were in perfect balance. But God wasn't concerned about that stuff when I showed up. God only wanted to throw a cosmic scale party and go, it's Tony's peace. But there was no sound. It was perfect. Okay? Silence. God has perfected silence. Think about that. Is there any place here that's ever really silent? Even if it's in a quiet room, what are you going to hear? Your heartbeat, your breathing, something. Not there. It was perfect silence. Divine silence.
That's an interesting way to describe it. Messages were transferred differently, but it wasn't, it was peaceful.
No sound. And it was total peace. Yeah, all of that. And so the love was the most profound thing. That's the first thing you know. It's unconditional and it's infinite. There's no limit to how much you can absorb if you want. It was unbelievable. And so, what was I going with that?
Did you feel yourself changing when you were there? I mean, did you feel yourself just like absorbing more and more of it?
Oh, it wasn't that I was absorbing it. It was ripping through me. I'm just in the way, That's what it's like. It's rolling through the universe and I'm standing in the way. And I caught it all. That's what it's like. You're going to get it. If you're there, you're going to get it, and it's going to hit you full force. But it's wonderful force. So I was just dumbfounded, and I said 3 words. I remember saying 3 words. I said, just in a dumbfounded expression, I went, "Oh my goodness." And once again, The call compelled the answer. And I didn't understand this till years later when Lily explained it to me. She goes, that good, and then goodness, all the goodness and existence blasted through me. It was specific. It was different from the love. It was different from God's excitement. It was different from God's joy. I felt those things about God being happy that I was back. Okay. But this was different and had its own tone, energy, whatever, and goodness. And Lilia said that was your goodness because you called, oh my goodness. And I never thought about that like that. But what that means is we're all part of all of that. That oneness is not only God's goodness and God's love, it's ours too. It's part of ours. So we're God's children. And, you know, we're here trying to learn how to love like that. So I was just dumbfounded. I couldn't believe what I was seeing and feeling and experiencing. And then there was this, I call it the urge to merge moment. I don't, that's just all you want is to go further and deeper into the light. And as that started to happen, I started seeing these, I'm staring at the light. I don't look at anything else. Okay. And you know what I mean by that. It's that you can't, you just focused on that totally. But because of that, I could see this peripheral vision out, you know, I could see out in front of me some hands out there. And I didn't care about them. I saw them, but I didn't even think about them. And after a while, as that happened, the bedroom, my bedroom that I was sleeping in started coming into my peripheral vision and just kind of bringing itself around me. I don't know how to explain that. But as it did that, I realized those were my hands. I had my hands out. I had sat up in the bed and I'm holding my hands out to the light. And I realized that my wife was asleep because I could see her feet. And I could tell by how her feet were positioned under the cover that her body, I could see, you know, I could tell her back was to me. And I remember thinking, how can she sleep through this? There's like 100 billion trillion stars in here. How can anybody sleep through this? It's so bright. And then that's when I realized it was real. I was awake and this isn't a dream. And as soon as I understood that and God knew that, the light didn't go away instantly. Now this thing's big. It's in my bedroom at the end of the room. The whole wall on that end is gone. And the part of the ceiling. So it's like a big circle that's just not a wall and ceiling anymore. And God's in my bedroom and I couldn't believe it. And the moment I realized that and recognized it, it all shrunk down in about a 2.5 second maneuver. And that's when my heart broke. Because I just had the greatest love I'll ever know ripped away from me. And I didn't know why. I didn't get to stay. I wasn't told why it happened. Nothing. I didn't understand anything. And I just sat there crying quietly. My wife's sleeping, still dark. And there was this light moving around in the wall still. And I just stared at it, begging the light to come back. That's all I wanted. Just one more second, please. That's all I wanted. And I sat there until the sun came up and my wife woke up and she sees me and she's like, what's wrong with you? You know, I don't know how to answer that yet. I knew I needed an answer, but I didn't know how to answer it. And that following Sunday, I thought I'd get my answer at church. And that didn't happen either. And I went up to the pastor afterwards. He was a guest pastor that week. And he kind of turned his back on me and just walked off and didn't say anything. And I was dumbfounded again within a matter of a few days and of each other. And then the following week, I tried to go to another church somewhere else with my wife. And it was a bigger congregation. I'd never been there before. So at one point, they have this like open forum where people raise their hand out in the congregation to bring up concerns or whatever. So I needed answers, right? I'm just like, I don't care I'm going to go, right? And I'm trying to get up and ask my question, and my wife knows what's going on, and she's grabbing my arm, yanking me back down, and I pull my arm away. I'm like, let go of me. I literally said that out in church. Everybody's seeing this, you know? And I needed answers, and I started telling a little bit of what happened. I started crying again because you can't not do that. And it was a long time before I could tell my story where I had real good control of my emotions and be able to pull it back in. But I got some sort of lame answer from that pastor too in front of everybody, and I knew it wasn't the right answer because I knew the standard, even though I didn't understand that yet. It was only four days old.
Right.
So I ended up out in the parking lot. Another military person who was an officer came up to me, and I don't know if he knew I flew or he'd seen me before or something, but he kind of knew something. It was a long time ago, so I can't remember the details, but I remember him telling me, you don't need to be talking about that anymore. You know?
Really?
Yeah, if you're going to be in the military, I suggest you should not talk like that. He wasn't ordering me, but he was walking up saying, you know, you probably won't get to stay in if you keep doing that. And I had not considered any of that. I mean, it was 4 days old. So I'm getting hammered with all these different.
And that's the weird part. We come back to our lives, and we come back to other people's judgments of what we just experienced, and we come back to traditions and all these different elements.
All I can keep thinking is, but you don't understand. But you don't understand.
We've just shoved all this amazing consciousness into our forms, and then people are making, judgments about where we are. I want to fast forward a little bit, and I'm really curious about how you help people in the military now, and how people found you after you've told your story and they've told you their stories, and have you counseled some people?
Well, I help anybody I can if it comes up, and I've learned to be more discerning about it because there are people out there that will try and take advantage of someone that they think is too nice.
Yeah,
that's happened before too. So I've had to learn how to see.
Yeah. I know. That's the other downfall, isn't it? Because we come back and we see the divinity in everyone.
We become vulnerable if we're not careful.
Yeah. How do you do that personally? That might help other near-death experiencers or just people who are somewhat innocent. How do you discern?
I've decided to wait until the opportunity comes up that the subject matter can naturally progress in that direction. And it's a synchronistic thing for me. I will know. I've decided, instead of trying to push it on everybody because that's Tony's will, wait and let God's will show up, and then I'll know what to do. So that takes practice over years to learn how to do that and figure that part out. And in doing so, I've learned it's a lot more interesting path too.
Yeah. But how do you discern who is possibly going to take advantage of you and who is not?
You can just tell after a period of time who's being genuine with their story and who's not, or they will say things that they think you want to hear about the other side or something, and that's not right. Okay, just no. And it's kind of like, how does a chief petty officer, senior enlisted rank, know when his junior troops isn't really performing well or doing right? Because you've got the experience. Okay, that's why you know. And I don't know how else to put it into words other than intuition, experience, and having been there, done that. The difference.
Yeah.
And early on, you're so overwhelmed with all your emotions, and you're so needy for help and answers that especially if your early days, it took me years to be a lot more comfortable with talking about it and being able to open up about it and not sound crazy.
Yeah. And I wasn't in your situation, like in the military, but I knew, lived in Texas, and I knew not to talk too much about the after effects, the intuition or the psychic flashes or any of that. But, and I didn't meet with a lot of support either. So I do understand that. But I did stumble into spiritual communities, and I did go hear Danny and Brinkley speak, and I did hear, like early on, some different
See,
near-death experiencers,
you
and so then I felt, like I'm okay to talk about it.
that's good. You had that opportunity. My culture that I was enmeshed in the military is not like that at all.
No, no, you didn't have that at all.
Prayers and all that, but they don't want to hear about your individual stuff. If it's happening to you, they'll shut that down in a hurry. So I didn't have anywhere to go. And what happened to me was I felt like I'd been kicked out of heaven without an answer, right? And I felt like I got kicked out of the church too. 2 of them.
Wow.
Within 2 weeks. And so I got angry. Okay, I was young and immature. I'm an adult. I was doing adult things, but I'm still a kid in a lot of ways. At that age, you're not really, you don't have the wisdom you think you do yet. And that was hard. I had no help.
Yeah. So when did you feel like, was it 20 years after? Was it 10 years after? When did you feel like you had some greater peace with the event and the answers? Was it IONS? Like what?
It was after I started getting involved with just speaking and coming out more. That's when I started. And then I started meeting more people and getting more perspectives and getting a wider understanding, and just, you grow, you evolve, and God brings the right people into your life. If you seek, ye shall find. It'll be brought to you. It might take a long, long time. It took me over 3 decades to find my answers, and I got them through the St. Germain Foundation and the St. Germain Press. stgermainpress.org. That's where you get them.
Well, I love that. And I love how each journey is a little bit different. And I do think that, mine happened in 94 and I was in Austin. And so there was a little bit more, there were pockets of spiritual groups and meditation groups who were very open to talking about these kind of things. And I think now when people come out, they have so much support and they can integrate these experiences so much quicker than they used to.
Yeah. Well, mine was back in 1982 and none of that existed. I mean, I think IONS was out, and the first book I ever read that had anything to do with that was a couple of years. I don't remember when it came out, but it was the first one that, what was his name? Raymond Moody wrote Lessons from the Light.
Yes.
And that's when I knew I wasn't crazy.
You're like, yes, there's others like me. There's others who are as brokenhearted for that light.
Wasn't crazy.
Yeah, I do call us like people who are a little bit brokenhearted from our experience with God, because we just forever long for that love.
It's all that's the only true existence. That's where we're supposed to be all the time. So that's why I'm so infatuated with and love the St. Germain books, is because that what they are teaching instructions on how to become an ascended master. Now that doesn't mean ascended master that you're have any spiritual superiority or moral authority over anybody. Okay, it's about that power and energy that exists in the universe, and we've become a master of our consciousness to be able to bring that God consciousness into power and use and service of the light. And there's literally nothing we can't do if we're doing it in the service of God for the right reasons, right purposes. What we're doing all here, in my opinion, what this all is here is a training ground. Yeah, we're in the most sophisticated life simulator ever devised. Okay, we exist within it. Yes. And the purpose of it is for spiritual growth, so we can learn how to love like God does and take care of this planet and love God with all our hearts. And that's really all we need to do.
I totally agree. I don't know if you ever read that book, Hind's Feet on High Places, but
No, I haven't. No.
It's inspired by Pilgrim's Progress, and it's about this hind that is, scared, and she's going through many different places, and she's trying to reach the high places, which will be, with God, with her shepherd. And the journey is what's so important. And that's what I look at here. And I was thinking about this today, how it is the journey. We're trying to bring in that love. We're trying to bring in that spiritual truth and power for ourselves and for other people. And it's a struggle. It's not always easy. And yet, that's our journey, is to do that. And that's what we get to take with us, is however much love we bring in. It's like that's our medal. That's kind of like our gold medal that we take with us. Oh, look, I brought love here. Yay. And that's the beauty of it. And it's, that we get lost in thinking it's so many other things, but you're exactly right. There's nothing we can't do with that, with bringing in God's power. I mean, as long as we're doing it for the good of humanity, then we will be given the tools.
Yes, yeah, they will show up, and it's just how they show up can blow your mind too.
I know, right?
One of these days, Tricia, I'm gonna have to sit down and tell you everything that's been going on. I'm not gonna tell you what it's about because it's an ongoing investigation, but it isn't. I am the one that provided all the evidence and all that, so I'm not the one in trouble, obviously. But a lot of people are going to be in trouble, and I can't tell you any details because it's still an ongoing FBI investigation. But when I first got interviewed by the FBI, I told them I was going to wear that flight suit right there. I said, I'm going to wear that I have a reason. If you can indulge me when I get there, please do so. Not crazy, but I'm going to wear my flight suit so you know who's showing up and why. Well, this flight suit's got like probably a dozen zippers on it, metal. I'm talking about metal, right? You can see the wings, those are metal wings on there. I've got big coin, a bunch of ink pens and stuff in there. I had a necklace on. I said, oh, this metal. So steel-toed flight boots, right? So I show up with my chief's hat on, big metal emblem of my chief insignia on my hat, my cover. And so when I get there, these two investigators tell me I've got to go. This is their facility, right, in their spaces. And they have a metal detector there, and I've got to go through their security protocol. Well, before I went there, I said a prayer, and I asked God to provide me with a sign when I get there so that I know whether or not I can bring up my spiritual reasons and my experiences with them so that they know why I did what I did and why it went down the way it did. And so I walk in the door and I get there and they tell me I got to go through their security protocol, and I walk through their metal detector and it was like I was a ghost. It didn't make a sound. And they look at each other and one of them says to the other, "Is it on?" And the other one said, "I think it is." And so she walks around and walks through the metal detector wearing normal clothes like you are. And it lights up. And that's when I knew. And so one of these days I'll tell you all the other story, but when it all hits the news, and you'll know, it's going to hit the news one day. It'll be big news.
Wow.
And it's going to expose massive amounts of corruption at large scales, and a lot of people are in trouble. A lot of people are in big trouble. But it's how that information came to me to make all that happen. And then I walked through that metal detector. Yeah. And it's like, I'm laughing, I'm chuckling in my head because I'm all excited and I want to be like when I was in the light. Yeah, I know what's going on. This is going to be a great ride. So the whole experience is like, I already know this is laid out before me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a story like that, but I do know that our energy can affect machines. Yeah. That,
well,
I've heard that.
Remember, part of what my life has been about, a big part of it, was I gave an oath to defend the Constitution. And that oath did not end the day that I took my uniform off and walked and retired from the military. That's an ongoing commitment because that Constitution was a God-given document. I know the real story on how that happened, and it's not everything we've been taught. There's a lot more to it than that, and that's part of what these Saint Germain books about, the unsolved mysteries or untold mysteries. I can't remember the name of it right now. I'm drawing a blank, but
interesting.
It talks about the patriotism aspect and why this country's freedom is important and why God's got his favor on the United States of America and why this country will never fail. And it's all has to do with the Constitution too. So I'm defending that, and I'll defend it at all costs because that's what I'm supposed to do. And I think because of that God knew I'd never quit or give up. This whole thing has been almost a decade of profiling and work that I put in to make all this happen. I never gave up. I never quit because I knew God would show up. when the timing was right for God. Has nothing to do with what Tony wanted or when Tony would like for all this to be over or when Tony would want this or that to happen. Tony just had to keep showing up and let God do the work, and it would unfold in a manner that just blew my mind. I still can't believe all that happened.
Yeah.
A whole lot more of it's happened that shouldn't have happened, but that the metal detector was.
Yeah. I think we'll just leave people with that idea of you going through that metal detector. And the weirdest thing that happened with me with technology is I told my students one day that my energy has an effect on technology. And I was like, I swear it does. And I put my hand out like this, and the whole computer started, like the whole screen.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, sorry. And they were like, that was freaky. It doesn't usually immediately do that, but every once in a while.
Yeah, the FBI agents thought it was freaky too.
I bet. I bet. Oh, the unexplained phenomenon, little miracles here and there.
That's still happening to me.
So thank you, Tony, so much for sharing more of your story with me on my channel. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And my last thing is, everybody, just go be love and your life will be fine.
Yes, it's a verb. Be love. I love that. And if you want to hear more from near-death experiencers, please check out the link below for the summit, which will be occurring on June 23rd through University of Heaven. And I'm so excited to bring so many speakers to that event. But thank you, Tony, and may everyone be blessed.